how to really claim and be in the fullness of who we are when there is trauma present. Just for everybody to be on the same page, when I talk about trauma, it's similar to, say, how Gabor Mate would define it, where there is latent or undigested charge from an event or an experience or a period of life that may have been repeating, where we have not fully been able to move and release and connect to these parts. So they hold almost like an echo or a residue or, like I said, a remnant charge. When we enter into a relationship or a moment in life and something might be difficult, too much, too fast, too soon, it can stimulate that charge and resurface that trigger. And the trigger is then heightened and overly sensitized and becomes bigger because of what's already present. So remember, trauma is what's already inside of you. And it is the response of not just what happened to you, but what happens inside of you in response to what happened to you. So it's really, how are we managing these things that happen to us that were often too fast, too much, too soon. And because they were too much, too soon, too fast, they're stored in our body for later until we regulate and we feel safe enough to kind of go back. Not so much in our mind, but the body wisdom naturally will surface and bring things up when it's safe enough to do so. Everybody has trauma. Usually trauma is in two categories, little t or big T. The little t are the violations and neglects that don't necessarily derail us completely. These are things that happen all the time. They're part of our lives. Every human has them. They could be small in the terms of like maybe a moment of unattunement from our caregivers or parents, times when we weren't really deeply felt, honored, heard, seen, got. Big T is, maybe war, genocide, sexual abuse, rape. I'm not minimizing by only mentioning a few. There's a lot, but I'm just talking about, you get a sense that it's big, right? I work personally in Circle with and in Hard IQ with both big T and little t traumas. There's also a thing called group trauma, where we are injured because of a group dynamic, maybe at school, maybe in family, which is why I love group work, because in order to heal group trauma, you need a group. Just like if you want to heal relational trauma or attachment injury, you need a relationship, you need attachment. So we often need the very flavors of the things that injured us, or at least the container or the frame. We can't, in other words, do it on our own. So I'm saying all of that to prelude or, to answer this question, because trauma does diminish range. It does mean that we cannot fully access our full aliveness and our full emotional, energetic capacity and full spectrum of how life force and love wants to move and how consciousness wants to move through our being and our body. So that's really the definition of trauma, is diminished range over the long term due to things that have happened in our past. Therefore, I don't see it as how do I live my fullest self, because I'm always on a path of growth like this. I'm doing the best that I can to open more to myself. And the way I meet trauma is not by push, but by encouraging slowing down. If trauma happens because things happen too fast, too much, too soon, the opposite of that would be to slow down and to go into slow motion, to come into rest, to prioritize things that put my nervous system into parasympathetic dominance, to not push and strive in the way that is coming from needing to do in order to get value, but to rest in beingness. And to realize that as I drop more and more into safety, as I prioritize that, more and more becomes available to me. And I think that's different to how things were in the past, in terms of the personal development, which was more about pushing to the edge, go beyond your comfort zone, change your beliefs, reframe your mind, where it's now more about nervous system, polyvagal theory, dropping into regulation, parasympathetic dominance, doing the things that help us come into deep rest. This is what I feel is the practice. That's what needs to happen in life. And then when we do that, more comes online and we become more available and more aspects of ourselves naturally. We don't need to necessarily expand into our full range by going into our full range. Sometimes we just need to drop in and feel safe. So I think that's how we live with trauma, is to accept it and love what is and welcome it and be aware that it ain't going anywhere. There's often this fallacy or this thought that as soon as I meet it and do my therapy and I kind of heal it's done and it's gone, and like I don't have trauma anymore. Trauma is not something in the body that disappears and the aim is to get rid of it. Our trauma is in fact holding keys and gifts and gold that develop into our superpowers once we learn how to turn our pain into purpose, our wounding into art. So I wouldn't be so quick to try to get rid of that which can actually serve your life path and purpose. The charge begins to become less. But the remnant, the echo, the wisdom of that trauma can be transmuted. We always have it potentially as an Achilles heel, though. It might prevent. It may still present as it's like a weak spot or a potential trigger. We might manage it better. We might develop better resources to stay away from the trigger zone and stay more regulated. But those of us who've got more trauma just have to do a little bit more work to stay safe in our nervous system. Cool. That's a good question.